The United States, which claims to be the world's #1 superpower, really finds it hard to build a high-speed rail. From 2008 to 2025, from a budget of $33 billion United States dollars to today's $128 billion United States dollars. The California high-speed rail project has spent $16 billion USD in 17 years. Yet not a single track has been laid. Note, it's not half laid. Nor is it a short section laid, but not an inch of track at all. This is making everyone angry, let alone Trump. On July 16th, Trump lashed out on social media calling the California high-speed rail project a scam, a mess, and stated that the federal government would terminate funding for the project. Not putting in another penny. He used some rather sophisticated words. Catastrophic nothingness. The completely unnecessary rhetoric was unusually sharp, showing that Trump was truly furious to a certain degree. In his words, this mess has cost taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, and apart from going over budget, achieved nothing. The railway that was promised back then still has not been built, and never will be built. The project was originally scheduled to be fully operational in 2020, but has now been delayed until 2033. Judging by the current trend, it's basically never going to be completed. That same day, U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced the cancellation of about $4 billion United States dollars in federal funding for the California high-speed rail. He even mercilessly mocked the California high-speed rail project, stating on social media that the Hoover Dam took only 5 years to build, and the Golden Gate Bridge only for years. Yet this thing has been 17 years and still not done. Governor Newsom and California's high-speed rail mess are prime examples of incompetence and even corruption. The two of them had their say, but California was not happy about it. On July 17th, the California High-Speed Rail Authority filed a lawsuit against the federal government, accusing it of abuse of power, and claiming that withdrawing previously promised funds was illegal. California Governor Newsom stated that the termination of funding was political retaliation, politically motivated, and a personal hostility toward California, and that the state would not yield, fighting the federal government's illegal actions to the end. The state government also wrote in a statement, "We are not being mocked because we failed, but because we are still trying to do the right thing," and so on. Something feels off here. This high-speed rail dispute was originally still an engineering issue, land acquisition disputes, environmental assessments, technical bottlenecks, and so on. How did it develop into a power struggle between the U.S. federal and state governments, and a fierce partisan confrontation? In fact, as early as June this year, the Federal Railroad Administration had already raised concerns about the California high-speed rail. It issued a 315-page report, pointing directly to issues such as delays, insufficient budget, and questionable passenger flow forecasts. The report specifically mentioned that the initial 274-kilometer section had not even begun track laying, and that California had not secured the $7 billion United States dollars needed for construction. In short, it said something was really off about building this high-speed rail. Facing these criticisms, the California High-Speed Rail Authority strongly opposed the conclusions of the U.S. Department of Transportation, calling the report's conclusions misleading, and stating that the project had already created about 15,500 jobs and was actively under construction. It had completed over 50 major railway structures, including bridges, interchanges, and viaducts, and so on, and even referred to the California high-speed rail as the first true high-speed rail in the United States, meaning, it's not like I haven't done anything. The construction of high-speed rail still has great benefits. For you to say this about me, I really can't accept it. But the state government's explanation seems so pale and powerless in the face of a massive financial black hole. So, why is it that a single high-speed rail line has taken so long and still isn't done? Where exactly are the difficulties in building high-speed rail in the U.S.? This indeed has something to do with central and local factors. The U.S.'s unique political system means high-speed rail projects require interstate cooperation, but the federal and local governments don't get along. Local powers are too strong. There are partisan divides, serious bickering, poor policy continuity, and constant conflicts as a result. Most importantly, 1/3 of the California high-speed rail's funding depends on federal grants, but this money has always been a political hot potato. As early as 2019, Trump tried to take back $3.5 billion United States dollars in grants. When Biden came to power, he restored support. Now that Trump has made a comeback, he directly cuts off the funding chain. This flip-flopping has thrown the project into a vicious cycle. When federal funds are in place, local governments dare not start large-scale work. Once the funding is cut off, the $16 billion United States dollars already invested risks going down the drain. This confrontation exists not only between the federal and state governments, but permeates every stage of the project. Most land in the U.S. is privately owned, so railway companies must negotiate with many owners to purchase land. The process is lengthy and extremely costly. Labor costs and environmental standards are also far higher than in other countries. The environmental review for California high-speed rail took nearly 10 years. Geographical factors are equally crucial. The U.S. has vast land and sparse population, with cities spread out and very low population density, making it hard to support high-frequency high-speed rail operations. In short, the slow development of high-speed rail in the U.S. is mainly due to political and capital interest constraints. While the U.S. is endlessly debating a 275-kilometer stretch of high-speed rail, China's high-speed rail network is expanding at an astonishing pace. When California launched its high-speed rail plan in 2008, China had just opened its first high-speed rail line. Today, China's high-speed rail operational mileage exceeds tens of thousands of kilometers, accounting for more than 70% of the world's total high-speed rail mileage, and covering 97% of cities with populations over 500,000. In its lawsuit documents, the California High-Speed Rail Authority reluctantly admitted that U.S. government investment in high-speed rail is negligible compared with other countries, including China. The gap in construction efficiency is even more glaring. California's high-speed rail has failed to lay even an inch of track in 17 years, while China's Beijing-Shanghai high-speed rail, stretching 1,318 kilometers, took only 3 years to build, and is now one of the busiest high-speed rail lines in the world. The planned San Francisco-Los Angeles route of California's high-speed rail is about the same distance as Beijing to Zhengzhou in China. And China had already achieved a 2-hour direct connection on that route as early as 2012. More importantly, China's high-speed rail has formed a scale effect through its 8 verticals and 8 horizontals network, driving economic growth in cities along the routes. While California's high-speed rail hasn't even finished laying the most basic tracks, the Daily Telegraph in the UK described China's latest maglev technology with 4 words: far out of reach. These same 4 words also apply to the gap between China and the US in high-speed rail construction. If nothing else works, the US could just send people to China to learn. There's no shame in that.